This year, Royal Ascot delivered with Field of Gold Phenomenal, Ombudsman and Trawlerman both winning in the Godolphin Blue, and American Affair doing the business for trainer Jim Goldie. And another trainer who had a sensational week was Harry Eustace, with 2 Group 1 wins and Labot going oh so close in the Britannia. We've come to the yard to find out how the big 3 are getting on and what their plans are for the rest of the season. Harry, fabulous Royal Ascot, 2 Group 1 winners. Have you come down from riding the wave just yet?
Just about, yeah, just about. It's been very, as you can imagine, busy 2 or 3 weeks, sort of obviously the Ascot week itself and post-Ascot. You know, the response from everyone's been fantastic, and yeah, it's sort of beginning to sink in now, yeah.
And obviously when you go to a meeting like Royal Ascot with runners, you want them all to win, but was it ever in your wildest imagination that you would get 2 at the top level?
I don't think, certainly with our numbers, you think we're going to pick up 2 Group 1s. We knew they're training well, and we felt they were probably overpriced, but I don't think anyone dared allow ourselves to think that we might win two Group 1s at Royal Ascot. That would be reaching a bit, I think, yeah.
And I imagine for yourself, particularly nice to be able to get the first of those with Docklands, who's been your stable star ever since you started.
Absolutely, you know, he's. I mean, it's sort of curious that that's the first stakes race he's actually won, and it was beginning to get a bit frustrating that he hadn't actually won one yet. But he has, by a long way, been our flag bearer for a number of years now. He obviously won the Britannia. He was second in the Queen Anne last year, and then managed to win it this year. So he is a genuine yard favourite, and yeah, for him to get the job done for us was fantastic, yeah.
And I remember reading your quote about him after Epsom, saying he's at this stage of his career when he needs everything to absolutely drop right, and I guess it did.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to, particularly at Ascot, you know, for whatever reason. I think, you know, even they didn't go that quick, but it you know, he's a big, long striding horse, and that track really allows him to build up through his gears, whereas other tracks, I think, it can find him out a fraction at the, you know, in a tactically run race at Epsom just didn't quite pan out as we needed it to. Although I said afterwards, ironically, it probably was a blessing in disguise. He got into trouble at Epsom because he didn't win very far at Ascot. And, you know, who knows if that would have made the difference? I don't know. But I thought the ride from Mark Zahra in particular in a tactically run race was absolutely first class, and it was the harder one to sort of let settle in even now, because it was the Queen Anne, and you know, we've grown up watching some of the absolute greats winning it, and to think that his name's going to be on that trophy is particularly special, yeah.
Would all roads lead now to Ascot at the end of the season for Champions Day? Is that what you're kind of working back from?
He's a horse that takes his racing incredibly well, and he's 5, and he's in training to be a racehorse and go to the races. So he'll run 2, if not 3 times before Ascot.
Okay, so where are you thinking in between now and then?
I would have thought he'll run in the Sussex Stakes. You know, they've put a lot of prize money on. Obviously, Field of Gold, it sounds like is going there, as is Rosallion, but you know, he's got to run. He's easier for me to train going to the races than he is trying to sort of target a race a long way out. So he'll run there, and then I would think the Jack Lamar as well, which is sort of 2.5 weeks later, I think. You know, he ran at Epsom 10 days before Ascot, and he then ran a career best. So I don't have to worry about freshening him up for a run as much as sort of mentally keeping him focused, and that's where racing helps me in that regard, yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about Time For Sandals, your other Group 1 winner, in slightly different circumstances, being a sprinter, of course, as opposed to a miler. And she beat some very highly touted, well-regarded, precocious 3-year-olds, didn't she? And the style in which she did it on her own on the far side was quite something to watch. Yeah,
she was very, very tough. And again, you know, when you win at 25-1, you know, some people sort of question the form, but you know, she had to do a lot of work on her own for quite a long way. And I was very taken with how she went through the race and how tough she was to the line. I felt if we'd been drawn in the near side group, it would have been a more straightforward watch for me, certainly. But you know, she's pretty good, and you know, we always thought she'd be up to that sort of calibre, and you know, for one reason or another, which she hadn't quite been a winner since winning her maiden this year, but we didn't feel that we'd quite got the best out of her, and that Ascot could just do that. So that was, you know, fantastic. Great with Richard on board. He's been with her all the way, bar one race, and yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah.
And did you run her in the Fred Darling earlier in the season with a view to potentially being a Guineas horse, and decided to drop back and trip when it clearly wasn't right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens a lot. You know, 6 furlong fillies that have proved a level of ability, you know, at 2. The sort of sprinting 3-year-old filly programme is very light at the sort of stakes level, and so everyone gives sort of 7 furlongs a try initially because, you know, there's the obvious programme there. But she obviously ran well, but she was a bit fresh anyway. But she travelled too well almost, and the final furlong was just a very long way for her. She was tough to finish 3rd, but it sort of cemented plans with her, and you know, we dropped back to go sprinting, and we went to France thinking we were a chance, and we ended up bumping into the Jean Prat winner. So you know, it's funny how, you know, things turn out, but you know, it's nice when you get a bit of a form boost around that to see it. Yeah.
I suppose it opens up options now over 6, but also potentially over 5. Do you think she got the speed for 5?
Well, we're going to find out. I fully admit that the 5 furlongs at Goodwood and or York are probably the fastest in the country, so we're asking a question of her, but if she's up to that, you know, there are options. There's obviously the Nunthorpe path to Goodwood and the Flying 5 at the Curragh. If she gets a little bit caught out, then we've, you know, Haydock in September, and you know, what we do after that, I'm not sure.
Labot's here in front of us, looking very relaxed, I have to say.
Yeah, he's a very chilled customer. So again, he makes my life incredibly straightforward, I have to say.
Would you be a trainer, Harry, who likes to run a novice under a penalty in general terms, or rather avoid that?
Well, I think everyone feels you have to. You know, unless you have sort of grander plans and you sort of jump straight into stakes company, it feels incredibly tough. I think a lot of trainers would agree that, you know, you manage to get one beat under a penalty that goes on to be a much better horse than any of the horses that it runs against. But for whatever reason, running under a penalty in novices, particularly sort of 3-year-olds, that sort of springtime in particular, feels tough. So for his 3rd run, you know, once he had run well really as a 2-year-old, the Britannia was the race that we were thinking about. He's owned by Australians, so Ascot was always going to be a large part of it. We actually ran him in a listed race rather than a novice because we thought he would learn more in a race of that calibre than in a novice under a penalty. So that was the sort of thinking. And then he got 99, and everyone told me I'd cocked it up. So.
And he nearly had 3 winners on the week because Labot just got chinned. I thought he was a bit unlucky.
Yeah, he got no racing luck, and you know, we've used up plenty of our luck with the other 2 runners, so we won't complain. But you know, a 30-runner handicap, you need it all to go right, and sadly he just didn't quite get a gap when he needed. You know, he'd only run 3 times, and he probably, if he'd had an extra run, you know, would he have been able to sort of go through a gap a bit smoother than he did? I don't know. I know Jamie felt, you know, when he finally got the gap, it just took him a stride or 2 to work out what he was asking him to do. But it was obviously you know, a massive run. He carried quite a lot of weight. You know, he's rated 99 doing it. He's very exciting. We've always thought quite a bit of him. He ran once last year and was, you know, very eye-catching, and the format of his listed race obviously worked out well. So, you know, he ran as we sort of expected, and you know, sadly it just didn't quite come off. But no, he's another nice horse to have in the yard. Yeah. Yeah.
What are your plans for him now?
Yeah, he will, I think, head to Australia at some point. We were very lucky to have him. Okay. Kieran Maher and Will Bourne, Colm Sharkey, they put a team of their owners in the hopes of doing what we nearly did, which is to, you know, go to Ascot with a winner. But, you know, being Kieran's owners, he'll head to Oz at some point. He'll have another start or 2. I would think at the moment my main aim is the Strensel. I thought 9 furlongs at York would be just about ideal. We sort of ummed and ahed about staying in handicap company, but he's now off 104 as a 3-year-old, feels tough. So he'll have his first crack at group company. That'll tell us and Kieran and Will very much, where they're going in Oz, what they're aiming for, that sort of thing.
And Divine Comedy, I thought was a bit unlucky not to finish even closer.
Yeah, again, she just didn't quite get, lucky in running, shuffled back early, they didn't go overly quick, and then just got sort of tightened up for room once they'd turned in. But, she ran on very well, finished 5th, loves that staying trip. She's been a remarkable mare for us. She started off, a pretty low mark, and she's really built up through the grades. She's still improving. She ran a career best as a 7-year-old this year, picked up some black type, and I would think she'll head to the 2.5 mile handicap at Goodwood for that meeting. And she actually, I think, is better with cutting the ground, albeit she handles quick ground. We might give her a sort of couple of ambitious sort of group options later in the autumn when the ground comes right for her, but at the moment I think we'll stick at handicap company.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.